As we head towards the end of The Penguin, Oz's development from a low-level mobster to an actual kingpin has been impressively complex. Like The Sopranos, which has been the constant comparison point, Oz's story hasn't exactly been straightforward, and his consolidation of power has been far more interesting by its obstacles as much as its progress.
No one gives it to you. You have to take it.
Episode 7 picks up from Sophia's invasion of Oz's apartment from The Penguin Episode 6's ending, but first jumps back in time to shockingly reveal what happened to Penguin's brothers in the 1980s. From there, Sophia and Francis Cobb spar, Oz is confronted by Sal Maroni, and Sophia makes herself even more of a threat. The Penguin Episode 7's cold open is actually a bit of a mixed bag. In terms of story, there's nothing to complain about. The tragic origin of Oz Cobb is a remarkably successful way to tie all of Oz's character quirks together. But I have to acknowledge that the accent work is again a little uneven, as much as it feels like a stacked deck to compare a young Ryder Allen to Colin Farrell. The prologue is an important bit of contextualization for Oz's story, and what Ryder does very well is sell the almost strange affection the young boy holds for his mother. The sequence that sees him watch her interact with his older brother sets up him as the magpie of information he'd later become, but there's also a thinly veiled Epador dynamic too.
If that's a veiled criticism about me, I won't hear it.
Obviously, the Penguin changes most of what we know about Penguin as a DC character, which caused some anxiety early on, but it's completely justified. Matt Reeves' image of Gotham introduced interesting ideas in the Batman, and Lauren LaFranc has expanded them well for the spin-off, reflecting Batman's own trauma in Oz's new origin. I'd argue that the decision to ignore the more familiar origin for his complex new version has actually led to a more interesting backstory entirely. Almost every character in The Penguin is a double. They project one side of themselves while suppressing their more vulnerable side. This episode brings that idea to a head after previous flirtations, mostly in the holy trinity of Oz, Sophia and Francis, but it's true of basically everyone other than Victor by design. Even the most hardened gangsters have tender undersides or are working through trauma. Theo Rossi, psychiatrist, is a secret sadist. Oz is in constant conflict with his own weaknesses even as he gains power. Deirdre O'Connell remains excellent as the tragic Francis Cobb, playing two distinctly different characters at once. She is a walking embodiment of one of the Penguin's most insistent ideas, the issue of self-image, and watching her deal with her traumatic prison is painfully accurate. Just as rewarding is her snap back to reality as the formidable drive behind much of Oz's scheming.
This out. Take a look at this! Jesus Christ, that right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail.
Colin Farrell is a revelation, of course, and despite the episode focusing on the tragedy of his origin, there can be no doubt that he is a monster. One of the most enjoyable deceptions of the Penguin has been the gaslighting process that's played with Oz as a sympathetic character before reminding us all that feeling anything but outright disdain for him is foolish. Again, the sympathy acrobatics are out in full force in Episode 7. Farrell is best when Oz is desperate or enraged, and we get both barrels here. Sophia's kidnapping of Francis puts him in a vulnerable position, of course, and his backstory fleshes out precisely why. He's then forced to balance out that with rage and what Sal and Sophia have taken from him, and that sting of his ascendancy crumbling to dust. It's a complex performance, and watching him goad Sal about the smell of his wife burning is a moment of precise, brilliant grotesquerie that stands out as the most memorable scene of the episode. For multiple episodes, we've been on a journey to Sophia's dark heart as she looks to reclaim herself after decades of Falcone institutional abuse. The Penguin episode 7 rather pours the rug out on her, forcing her to reckon with the reality of what she's become and kicking off a more dangerous period of her villainy.
Oh no, she didn't!
The decision to bring back her niece Gia is a very good one, given the opportunity to show Sophia the dark mirror she's created in herself. Considering the show's simmering exploration of legacy, to throw that back in Sophia's face just as she feels at her most powerful is very good storytelling. Again, anyone who's kept up with these episodic reviews of The Penguin will already see the next part coming, but Cristin Milioti is just really fucking great as Sophia. For the past few episodes, she's led us towards Sophia being a cold, numb monster devoid of emotion and terrifying as a result. Here, we get a sharp reminder of her humanity, and Milioti's ability to flip back to a more sympathetic performance ought to be studied. After a bigger part last time out, Renzi Feliz's Victor sits the episode out. Sometimes, it's right to recognise that, while a character is good, their presence is distracting. Episode 7 is focused on the relationship between Oz and his mother, and how his enemies weaponise that. Having Victor come in as a sort of voice of reason wouldn't allow the story to play out as it does. Instead, his only involvement is as a pointed note of weakness for Oz.
She knew my one weakness! That I'm weak!
There's more of Clancy Brown's Sal Maroni, who offers the opportunity for a great head-to-head with Oz and eventually a perversely perfect payoff to his story. Brown is very good as the personification of furious rage, as you'd expect, and his final scene in the episode is hauntingly memorable. With one more episode of The Penguin to go, the stage is obviously set for a final confrontation between Oz and Sophia. The most interesting development for that in episode 7 comes from Sophia's interactions with Gia and her decision immediately afterward. It almost feels like she's abandoned her entire plan simply to cause as much destruction as possible, and Oz is in the crosshairs. If you've been a fan of Farrell's desperate performance as Oz under the most intense pressure, the ending sequence that sees him robbed of pretty much everything in his armory will have been a particularly good news. And as much as it's cliché to say it, there is surely no possible way Batman can have seen that climax without feeling the urge to get involved in some way. The Penguin finale is longer at 68 minutes, and there are some key things to wrap up, but even without the finale, this is an exceptional TV show that promises a lot for the Batman sequel and beyond.
So exciting.